Hey friends, before we dive into this incredible true story, I want to hear from you. Drop a quick comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? Morning coffee in California, afternoon break in Texas, evening unwind in Florida, or maybe late night in New York. No matter where you are, California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, or anywhere else. I love connecting with you all now. Let me tell you a story that's going to absolutely blow your mind. What you're about to hear actually happened. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why this single flight changed an entire industry forever. Because sometimes the person you least expect to have power is the one person who can change everything. Let's get started. Act 1. You people always think rules don't apply to you. Ashley Rodriguez's voice sliced through the first-class cabin of Skybound Airlines Flight 892 like a blade. And 13-year-old Destiny Brooks felt every eye in the cabin turned toward her. The flight attendant's red manicured nails drummed against the armrest of seat 4B with deliberate impatience. Her blonde highlights caught the overhead light, perfectly styled despite 3 hours into the Detroit to Los Angeles flight. The diamond studs in her ears probably cost more than Destiny's entire wardrobe. Destiny sat frozen in the wide leather seat her parents had sacrificed everything to afford. The $3,284 first-class ticket, taxes included, suddenly felt like a target painted on her back. Her navy dress, the one her grandmother had bought her for church, was wrinkled from nervous fidgeting. Math competition materials lay scattered across her tray table, differential equations blurring through unshed tears that she absolutely refused to let fall. "Ma'am, I just need some ginger ale." Destiny's voice came out smaller than she intended, barely audible over the constant hum of the engines. "I feel sick." The cabin smelled like fresh coffee brewing in the galley mixed with expensive perfumes and the faint metallic scent of recycled air. Destiny's stomach churned, partly from turbulence, mostly from fear. Ashley leaned down until her face was level with Destiny's. Her Chanel No. 5 perfume was overwhelming, making the nausea worse. When she spoke, her voice dropped to a hiss meant for Destiny's ears alone, except she didn't realize the man 3 rows back was recording every word. "Of course you do, sweetie. Your kind always has some excuse." Ashley straightened up, her voice returning to professional volume but dripping with false sympathy. "This isn't a welfare clinic. You want something, you wait like everyone else." The boarding pass crumpled in Destiny's sweating palm. The paper was damp now, the ink starting to smear. Seat 4B, first class, paid in full. Every number and letter seemed to mock her. 3 rows back, in seat 7C, a man wearing a faded Chicago Bulls cap lowered his Wall Street Journal. Michael Patterson's worn Levi's and plain gray t-shirt made him look like any other middle-aged passenger heading to LA for a basketball game. His scuffed Nike sneakers were propped against the seat in front of him. The scratched iPhone case in his hand looked like it had survived a war. The passenger manifest listed him as Patterson Economy Plus. What it didn't mention was that Michael Patterson was the founder, CEO, and majority shareholder of Skybound Airways, the very airline currently cruising at 35,000 feet above Kansas. The man in the cheap sneakers owned the plane they were on. His phone was already recording. Employee badge number A6284, Ashley Rodriguez, 6 years with the company. And if the anonymous email he'd received 3 weeks ago was accurate, this wasn't her first time terrorizing passengers who didn't fit her narrow definition of appropriate. Michael's jaw tightened as he watched Ashley walk away from Destiny without a backward glance. Every instinct screamed at him to reveal himself now, to end this immediately. His knuckles whitened against the armrest, but he needed more evidence. This wasn't just about one racist flight attendant. This was about a system that had protected her for 6 years, despite 28 formal complaints. This was about supervisors who buried reports and executives who signed off on no action again and again. Michael needed to catch them all. Have you ever watched someone destroy their entire career in 30 seconds and not even realize they'd lit the match? Destiny stared at the call button above her seat, her finger hovering but not pressing. Her stomach cramped with hunger and anxiety. 47 hours and 18 minutes until her competition registration closed. The National STEM competition in Los Angeles. Her chance at a full scholarship to any university in America. Her parents' sacrifice. Her entire future. all of it hanging in the balance because she'd asked for ginger ale. Destiny's backstory, woven through dialogue. Destiny's finger trembled over the call button, but didn't press. Her mother's voice from that morning at Detroit Metro Airport echoed in her head like a lifeline. Baby, excellence has no color. You belong anywhere your brilliance takes you. But right now, surrounded by white passengers who'd been served champagne and warm towels without question, Destiny felt anything but excellent. She felt exactly how Ashley Rodriguez wanted her to feel, like she'd stolen something that wasn't hers. The truth was carved into her parents' bodies. Her father, James Brooks, had worked the same assembly line at Detroit Assembly Plant for 16 years. The repetitive motions, install door panel, secure bolts, move to next car, had left his shoulders permanently hunched, his back a landscape of constant pain. For 8 months, he'd pulled triple shifts, 16-hour days, 6 days a week. Destiny had heard him crying in the bathroom once, late at night when he thought everyone was asleep. The sound of a grown man weeping because his body hurt so much it felt like betrayal. She'd never forgotten that sound. Her mother, Patricia Brooks, cleaned office buildings. The weekday job paid the bills, barely. But for 8 months, she'd taken weekend shifts at 3 additional office complexes, scrubbing toilets until they gleamed, emptying trash cans that reeked of spoiled food, mopping floors on her knees until the cheap tile shined like glass. Her hands, once soft and warm when she'd tucked Destiny into bed as a child, had become rough and cracked despite all the lotion she used. The skin around her knuckles sometimes bled, all so their daughter could sit in seat 4B. The math was devastating in its simplicity. James's overtime paid $2,100 after taxes. Patricia's weekend shifts $1,184. Their savings account, scraped together from birthday money and tax refunds over the years, zero. They'd used every penny for Destiny's laptop for schoolwork last year. The remaining gap, $950, borrowed from Aunt Regina, who needed that money desperately for car repairs, but gave it anyway because family came first. Total $3,284 for a first-class ticket to Los Angeles. Why first class when economy was half the price? Not because they were trying to show off, not because Destiny needed luxury, because their 13-year-old daughter was flying alone for the first time across the country, and they wanted her to feel safe, protected, valued. They wanted her to arrive at the biggest moment of her life feeling confident and rested, not exhausted and cramped from 5 hours in a middle seat between strangers. The National STEM Competition, 52 students selected from thousands across America, 3 days of advanced mathematics, calculus, quantum mechanics, algorithm design, problems that made college students cry, all competing for the ultimate prize, a full-ride scholarship to any university in the country, plus $75,000 in cash. For a family living paycheck to paycheck, that scholarship wasn't just an opportunity, it was salvation. It meant James could stop the triple shifts before his back gave out completely and he couldn't work at all. It meant Patricia could quit the weekend jobs before her hands stopped working and she couldn't hold a mop. It meant Destiny could attend MIT or Stanford or Caltech without burying her parents in debt they'd spent decades repaying. Debt that would follow them into retirement, into old age, maybe into their graves. Everything they'd worked for, sacrificed for, dreamed about for 13 years. It all came down to the next 48 hours. And right now, Destiny couldn't even get a ginger ale. She looked down at her tray table, where her differential equations workbook lay open to problem 47. Determine the eigenvalues for matrixa where A equals 3, 2, 4, 1. Show all work. Yesterday morning in her Detroit bedroom, with sunlight streaming through the window and her mother making breakfast downstairs. She could have solved this in 8 minutes. She knew eigenvalue equations the way other kids knew their favorite songs, by heart, by instinct, by pure mathematical love. Now, with her vision blurred and her hands shaking and passengers staring at her like she'd done something criminal, she couldn't focus enough to read the numbers. The turbulence hit again, harder this time. The plane shuddered. Destiny's stomach lurched. She pressed her palm against her abdomen, trying to will away the nausea rising in her throat. The cabin smelled like coffee and fresh-baked bread from the meal service that would start soon. Her mouth watered even as her stomach revolted. She'd been too nervous to eat breakfast at the airport. Now it was almost noon, and the thought of food made her feel both desperately hungry and violently sick. She wanted to call her parents, wanted to hear her father's deep voice telling her everything would be okay, wanted her mother's reassurance that she belonged here, that Ashley Rodriguez was wrong, that excellence really did have no color. But her phone was in airplane mode. And even if it wasn't, what would she tell them? That their sacrifice, 8 months of triple shifts in weekend work and borrowed money and physical pain, had bought her a front row seat to humiliation? No, she wouldn't do that to them. She'd endure this flight in silence, get to the competition, win that scholarship, make every aching joint and every bleeding knuckle worth it. Destiny took a shaky breath and tried again to focus on the math problem. Numbers didn't care about skin color. Equations didn't discriminate. In the world of mathematics, there was only right and wrong, proven and unproven. It was the only place where she felt truly equal. 47 hours and 12 minutes until registration closed. She just had to survive this flight first. Michael's backstory. The hidden observer, Michael Patterson, watched Destiny's shoulders shake from 3 rows back and felt white-hot rage building in his chest like pressure in a sealed container. He'd spent 44 years learning to control his anger, to channel it into productive action rather than destructive reaction. Right now, watching a child suffer on his airline, that control was being tested like never before. He knew exactly what she was feeling because he'd lived it 35 years ago. Michael was 9 years old, wearing a button-down shirt from Goodwill that hung on his thin frame like a tent. His mother, Lorraine Patterson, had scraped together enough money to take him on a Greyhound bus from Chicago's South Side projects to Memphis to visit her sister. $47 for 2 tickets, money she'd saved by skipping meals and walking to work instead of taking the bus herself. It was the first time either of them had left Illinois. The first time he'd seen his mother smile without exhaustion pulling at the corners of her mouth, without the weight of 3 jobs crushing her spirit. They couldn't afford plane tickets, but his mother had packed sandwiches in Tupperware containers, dressed him in his Sunday best, and told him they were going on an adventure. At the Greyhound station, a security guard had stopped them, once, twice, 3 times while white families walked past without a glance, without a question, without having to prove they'd earned the right to buy bus tickets. "Ma'am, I need to see your tickets." Again, his mother's hands had trembled, just like Destiny's were trembling now. The shame of having to prove, again and again, that they belonged somewhere, that memory had burned itself into Michael's brain and never left. 26 years later, when Michael sold his first tech startup, Cloud Sync, for $47 million to a Fortune 500 company. He didn't buy a mansion first. He didn't buy a sports car or a yacht or any of the toys newly minted millionaires typically purchased. He bought an airline. Everyone in the industry thought he was insane. Why would a tech entrepreneur with no aviation experience buy Skybound Airways, a failing regional carrier hemorrhaging $15 million annually? The business press wrote think pieces about his hubris. His investors questioned his judgment. But Michael remembered his mother's trembling hands, and he'd decided that if he ever had the power to create a space where people were treated with dignity, regardless of their race or income, he'd build it. So he poured $60 million into Skybound. New planes to replace the aging fleet, competitive wages and comprehensive benefits to attract better staff. A company culture built around one principle that he'd personally written into every employee handbook, posted in every break room, repeated in every training session: every passenger deserves dignity. That's not optional, that's mandatory. For 5 years, he'd believed it was working. For 5 years, he'd thought he'd built something different. Then 3 weeks ago, he received an anonymous email that shattered that illusion. The subject line read, "You need to see this." The message contained 19 video clips from 11 different flights, 19 separate incidents captured on passengers' phones, people of color being denied service, moved to worse seats, questioned about ticket authenticity, treated with suspicion, while white passengers received champagne and warm smiles. Ashley Rodriguez's badge, A6284, appeared in the 6 of those videos. When Michael tried to pull her complete personnel file, he hit a wall. Someone in HR had restricted access. It took his IT director 2 days of digital excavation to bypass the restrictions and retrieve the unredacted record. What they found made Michael physically sick. 28 formal complaints over 6 years. Allegations ranging from verbal abuse to denial of service to outright racial profiling. Every single complaint had been marked, investigated, no action required, and signed off by Ashley's supervisor, Janet Pierce, badge S1947. But the anonymous whistleblower had dug deeper. They'd found 51 informal complaints, passenger emails, phone calls, social media posts that never made it into Ashley's official file. Janet Pierce had been intercepting them, deleting them, burying them to protect her employee, and Janet Pierce reported directly to Richard Thompson, VP of Operations, the man Michael had personally hired 5 years ago because Thompson had looked him in the eye and promised that culture change was his specialty. 23 times over 5 years. Thompson had reviewed cases involving Ashley Rodriguez and approved Janet Pierce's recommendation of no action required. 23 times he'd had the opportunity to stop this and chosen not to. This wasn't just one racist flight attendant. This was a systemic cover-up that went straight to Michael's executive team. This was the rot he'd tried so hard to prevent, growing silently in the darkness, while he congratulated himself on building an inclusive airline. The FAA required airlines to report patterns of discrimination. Those reports had never been filed. If federal regulators discovered this cover-up, Skybound could face millions in fines, potential loss of operating certificates, and criminal charges for senior executives who'd knowingly concealed civil rights violations. But more than the legal liability, more than the financial risk, Michael was furious because his airline, the company he'd built on his mother's memory, on the principle that dignity mattered, had become exactly the kind of place that would have humiliated her. So he'd booked himself an economy seat under a fake name, dressed like he was going to a Bulls game, and decided to see his airline through the eyes the whistleblower had shown him. He'd expected to witness discrimination eventually, maybe on his 4th or 5th undercover flight, maybe after a few weeks of methodical investigation. He didn't expect to witness it directed at a 13-year-old child within the first 30 minutes of his very first test. Michael's phone, hidden behind his Wall Street Journal, had been recording since Ashley first approached Destiny. The legal app he'd developed specifically for this investigation was automatically flagging violations in real time, each one appearing on his screen with citation codes. Violation 1, discrimination based on race, Civil Rights Act, Title 6, Violation 2, denial of service to paid passenger, FAA Regulations, 14, CFR Part 382, Violation 3, creation of hostile environment, Federal Civil Rights Law, 3 violations in 20 minutes. And this was just the beginning. Michael checked his watch 47 hours and 7 minutes until Destiny's competition registration closed. 1 hour and 34 minutes until this flight landed in Los Angeles. He needed more evidence. Needed to document the full scope of Ashley's behavior. Needed to catch the conspiracy on video. The coordination between Ashley, Janet Pierce, and anyone else involved in this system of discrimination. So he stayed in seat 7C, phone recording, rage building like steam pressure, and waited for Ashley Rodriguez to dig her grave just a little bit deeper. Because when Michael finally revealed himself, he wanted to make sure she, and everyone who'd protected her, never had the chance to do this to another child again. Ever. First escalation. The bathroom incident. 22 minutes after the ginger ale denial, Destiny's body made a decision her pride couldn't override. She needed to use the restroom. The turbulence had intensified, and her stomach was now cramping from anxiety as much as motion sickness. She unbuckled her seatbelt with careful, quiet movements, as if making herself smaller might make her less visible. The leather seat made a soft, creaking sound as she stood. Her legs felt weak, unsteady. One hand on the seat back. For balance, she stepped into the aisle. "Excuse me," Ashley's voice cracked through the cabin like a gunshot. She materialized from behind the galley curtain as if she'd been lurking there, watching, waiting for exactly this moment. Her employee badge, A6284, glinted under the overhead lights. "Where do you think you're going?" The question wasn't curious. It was accusatory. Destiny's voice came out small. "The bathroom." Ashley crossed her arms over her chest, blocking the narrow aisle with her body. Her posture radiated authority and contempt in equal measure. "The first-class lavatory is for verified first-class passengers only. I am a first-class passenger." Destiny held up her boarding pass with trembling fingers. The paper was damp from her sweating palms, slightly wrinkled. Seat 4B. Ashley snatched the boarding pass from her hand with a theatrical flourish that reminded Michael of a magician revealing a trick. Except the only illusion here was Ashley's professionalism. She examined the boarding pass under the overhead light, turning it over, holding it up to the light, even bending the corner slightly as if testing the paper quality. Her performance was deliberate, designed to be seen. Several passengers in nearby seats stopped their conversations to watch. The cabin's background chatter dimmed as attention shifted to the confrontation unfolding in the aisle. Ashley said, her voice loud enough for half the cabin to hear. This looks questionable. The printing quality seems off. Did you purchase this ticket yourself, sweetheart? The condescension in sweetheart made Destiny's skin crawl. My parents bought it. I see. Ashley's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. And what do your parents do for a living? The question hung in the recycled cabin air like a trap. Destiny knew, somewhere in her 13-year-old understanding of the world shaped by her parents' warnings and her own painful experiences, that this was wrong. That passengers shouldn't have to justify their parents' occupations to use an airplane bathroom. But she was alone, 35,000 feet above Kansas, surrounded by adults who all seemed to be waiting for her answer with varying degrees of judgment. My dad works at Detroit Assembly Plant. Her voice was barely above a whisper. My mom cleans offices. Ashley's eyebrows rose in exaggerated surprise. Factory work and cleaning. How interesting. She turned to address the nearby passengers as if Destiny weren't standing right there, as if discussing a misbehaving pet. And they just happened to have $3,000 lying around for a first-class ticket. That's quite a savings account for a factory worker and a cleaner. In seat 3A, Margaret Torres, a 56-year-old civil rights attorney from San Francisco, gasped audibly. Excuse me, are you seriously questioning this child's ticket based on her parents' jobs? Ashley's professional smile never wavered, but her eyes went cold. Ma'am, I'm simply following protocol. Ticket fraud is a federal crime, and I take my responsibility to protect legitimate passengers very seriously. She's 13 years old, Margaret protested, her lawyer instincts screaming that she was witnessing illegal discrimination, which is exactly why someone might try to use her. Ashley replied smoothly, her corporate training showing through. Sympathetic young face, possibly fraudulent ticket, trying to access first-class amenities they haven't paid for. I've seen this pattern before. I'm protecting all of our legitimate passengers. In seat 5D, James Hartley, a 51-year-old financial analyst who flew skybound 3 times a week, cleared his throat. The girl has a boarding pass. Just let her use the bathroom. Sir, I appreciate your concern, Ashley said with false sweetness that was somehow more cutting than outright hostility. But until I can verify the ticket's authenticity with our gate agents in Los Angeles, I need to follow security protocols. She turned back to Destiny, and her voice took on that same sickly sweet tone. You can use the lavatory in economy class. Honey, back past row 18, there's one there that's more appropriate until we verify your ticket status. Brad Whitmore in seat 3B nodded approvingly to his seatmate. He'd paid $3,800 for his first-class ticket, and he genuinely believed Ashley was doing the right thing, protecting standards, preventing fraud, maintaining order. Better safe than sorry, he muttered. Too much fraud these days. Destiny's vision blurred with tears she absolutely refused to let fall. Give Ashley the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Never. She nodded once, not trusting her voice, and started the long walk toward economy. The walk felt endless. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the carpeted aisle, each sound announcing her humiliation to passengers who turned to stare. The cabin air seemed to shift as she moved. First-class perfume giving way to the more crowded scent of economy. Her ears burned. She could feel every eye tracking her movement, hear the whispers starting up behind her like a wave. Past the galley where 2 other flight attendants watched with uncomfortable expressions, but said nothing. Complicity through silence. Through the curtain that separated first class from economy, a physical barrier that suddenly felt like an insurmountable wall. Past row after row of passengers who turned to stare at the young black girl in the navy dress walking the wrong direction, clearly being punished for something. The whispers followed her like ghosts. What happened? Something with first class. Probably got upgraded incorrectly. Some kind of issue with her ticket. The economy bathroom had a line of 6 people. Destiny stood at the back, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the industrial carpet pattern beneath her feet. A middle-aged woman in front of her kept glancing back with a mixture of curiosity and pity that made Destiny's skin crawl worse than the outright hostility would have. In the cramped, smelly economy bathroom, half the size of the first-class one, with a broken soap dispenser and toilet paper on the floor, Destiny finally let herself look in the mirror. Her face was flushed. Her carefully combed hair had frizzed from stress sweat. Her grandmother's navy dress looked wilted and wrong, like a costume that didn't fit anymore. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to breathe through the panic attack building in her chest. Mom said I belong anywhere. Dad said to keep my head up. They sacrificed so much for this. I belong here. I belong here. I belong here. But the reflection in the mirror showed a girl who looked anything but certain. Back in first class, Margaret Torres had pulled out her phone. Her law firm specialized in civil rights cases. She'd represented 47 airline discrimination victims in the past 15 years. She knew exactly what she was watching, and she knew exactly how rare it was to have this much documentation in real time. Her text to her senior partner: active civil rights violation in progress. Skybound Airlines flight 892. Minor victim. Recording everything. Need litigation team on standby. In seat 6A, Emma Martinez, a 19-year-old UCLA sociology major, had started live streaming to TikTok the moment Ashley questioned Destiny's boarding pass. Her phone was propped against the seat pocket in front of her, angled to capture everything. "Y'all," she whispered into the camera, her voice shaking with outrage. "This is absolutely insane. This flight attendant just refused to let a black girl, she looks like she's in middle school, use the first-class bathroom, made her walk all the way to economy, asked about her parents' jobs like that determines where you're allowed to pee. This is racism at 35,000 feet, and I'm documenting every second." The viewer count on her screen climbed 2,300, 5,800, 12,000, 34,000. Comments flooded in faster than she could read them. Get her badge number. What airline is this? I'm literally shaking. This is disgusting. Someone needs to stop this now. From seat 7C, Michael Patterson had recorded the entire interaction. His phone's legal app flagged 3 more violations. Violation 4, denial of access to paid amenities based on racial profiling. Violation 5, public humiliation of minor passenger. Violation 6, questioning passengers' financial status as pretext for discrimination. His text to Marcus Rivera. Skybound's General Counsel. Federal violations confirmed. Flight 892. Multiple witnesses recording. Prepare legal team and HR for emergency action upon landing. This is worse than the whistleblower videos. Marcus's response: standing by. Evidence quality. Michael typed back irrefutable. She's targeting a child, and it's all on video from multiple angles. This ends today. When Destiny finally made the long walk back from economy to seat 4B, past the same passengers, through the same whispers, carrying the same humiliation, Ashley was nowhere to be seen. But the boarding pass that had been in Ashley's hand missing. Destiny checked her pockets, her small backpack, the seat pocket. Nothing. Ashley had kept it. Destiny was now waiting in first class without any proof she belonged there. Ashley Rodriguez had erased her from first class without ever physically removing her from the seat. It was, Michael thought as he recorded Destiny's defeated expression, one of the cruelest things he'd ever witnessed. And it was about to get worse. Second escalation. Meal service denial. 35 minutes after the bathroom humiliation, the scent of herb-crusted fish and grilled steak began wafting through the first-class cabin. Destiny's empty stomach cramped painfully. She hadn't eaten since yesterday evening, too nervous about the flight to touch the scrambled eggs and toast her mother had made. Ashley pushed the gleaming meal cart through the cabin with practiced efficiency, a performer who knew her audience was watching. Her voice transformed into warm honey as she reached each passenger, describing menu options like she was hosting an exclusive dinner party rather than serving airplane food. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have a choice of herb-crusted Chilean sea bass with lemon caper sauce, or filet mignon with truffle butter and roasted vegetables. Both entrees come with a mixed green salad, artisan rolls, and your choice of dessert, either creme brulee or fresh raspberry tart. We also have a vegetarian pasta primavera, if you prefer. She reached seat 3A. Margaret Torres looked up from her phone with Ron, where she'd been documenting everything with timestamps and notes. The sea bass, please. Excellent choice, Ashley purred, warmth flooding her voice in a way it had never held when speaking to Destiny. We have a lovely Chardonnay that pairs beautifully with the fish. Cakebread Cellars, 2021. May I pour you a glass? Yes, thank you. Ashley plated the meal with artistic care, arranging the fish and vegetables like a restaurant presentation, drizzling sauce with a flourish. Enjoy your meal, ma'am. She moved to seat 3B. Brad Whitmore ordered the filet, medium rare, with a Cabernet. Perfect choice, sir. This is one of my personal favorites. Again, the careful plating, the attentive service, the warm smile that reached her eyes. Seat 4A was empty. No passenger assigned. Seat 4B, Destiny's seat, came next. Ashley pushed the cart right past it without stopping, without slowing, without even a glance, as if the seat were empty and Destiny invisible. The wheels of the cart squeaked slightly as they rolled past. Excuse me. Destiny's voice was barely audible over the cart's movement. I didn't get a meal. Ashley stopped the cart with deliberate slowness, turned around with exaggerated surprise, her face arranged in an expression of theatrical concern. Oh, you're still here. I'm so sorry, sweetie. I didn't realize you were a confirmed first-class passenger. Her tone made it crystal clear she didn't believe Destiny belonged there at all. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm still waiting for verification on your ticket status. But I showed you my boarding pass, Destiny said, her voice shaking despite her desperate attempt to keep it steady. Each word felt like pulling teeth. Right, but as I explained, there are questions about the authenticity of that pass. On Ashley's false sweetness was somehow more cutting than outright cruelty, the smile of a knife hidden in silk. You understand I can't serve meals to passengers whose ticket status is under investigation. Once we land, and I can verify with the gate agent that you didn't, say, upgrade yourself using stolen miles or a fraudulent credit card, then I'll be happy to serve you whatever's left. That's ridiculous, James Hartley said from 5D, his voice carrying more force now. His Wall Street Journal lay forgotten on his lap. The girl clearly has a valid first-class ticket. Just give her the damn meal. Ashley's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, a crack in the mask. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I have protocols to follow. Serving meals to passengers with questionable tickets wastes limited resources that could go to legitimate passengers like yourself. I'm sure you understand the need for proper verification in case of potential fraud. Destiny's stomach growled audibly in the suddenly silent cabin. The sound seemed amplified, humiliating. She felt every passenger hear it, judge it. I'm not hungry anyway. Destiny lied. The words tasted like ash. Her hands were shaking so badly she clasped them together in her lap, knuckles white. Of course you're not, honey, Ashley said with poisonous sympathy. But just to be safe. She reached across Destiny's seat and plucked the laminated menu card from the seat pocket. I'll hold on to this too. Can't have you trying to order from services you're not authorized to use. In seat 2B, Karen Morrison, a 48-year-old real estate agent from Orange County, watched the interaction with growing approval. She'd worked hard for her money, earned her success through 16-hour days and weekend open houses. People who couldn't afford first class should fly economy. That was how merit worked. This girl's parents were a factory worker and a cleaner, economy class jobs, economy class income. Why should their daughter be in first class? Good for her, Karen whispered to her husband. Airlines need to crack down on fraud. In seat 6A, Emma's TikTok live stream had exploded. The viewer count hit 89,000 and was climbing exponentially like a rocket. This is unbelievable, Mama whispered into her phone, angling it to capture Ashley walking away from Destiny without serving her. That flight attendant just refused to give this child, food on a 5-hour flight because she decided the girl's ticket is fake based on absolutely nothing except racism. This is what systemic discrimination looks like. Y'all, this is the system working exactly as it was designed, to exclude and humiliate. The comments scrolled past faster than anyone could read. A digital riot. Someone get the airline name. Badge number A6284 needs to be fired. This is child abuse. I'm crying watching this. Where are the adults? Why isn't anyone helping her? Marcus Rodriguez in Seat 8A had switched from his phone to his professional 4K camera. His documentary filmmaker instincts were firing on all cylinders. This was the kind of raw, painful truth that didn't just go viral. It changed conversations, shifted narratives, forced institutions to respond. He'd already sent preview clips to CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times with a simple message: child systematically discriminated against on flight. Breaking story. Full footage available. From Seat 7C. Michael Patterson's recording continued, his phone capturing every frame. His legal app added more violations to the growing list. Violation 7, denial of meal service, to paid first-class passenger. Violation 8, continued harassment based on racial profiling. But more importantly, Michael had captured something even more damning. When Ashley pulled out her personal phone in the galley, thinking she was hidden behind the half-closed curtain, Michael's angle from 7C caught the phone's reflection in the galley's stainless steel coffee maker surface. He zoomed in carefully. The reflection was clear enough to read. Ashley was texting someone. The contact name visible on screen, Janet P. as supervisor. The text, Captain Shaw flags suspicious passenger in 4B, black female, approx 13, claiming parents bought $3K plus ticket, factory worker plus cleaner, security report filed. The response came seconds later, clearly visible in the reflection. Good catch. Fits profile we discussed. File full report with photos. I'll coordinate with Thompson for media inquiries if needed. There it was, the smoking gun. This wasn't just Ashley acting alone out of personal bias. This was coordination between flight attendant, supervisor, and potentially upper management. This was systematic. This was conspiracy. This was a network of people protecting each other while targeting passengers. Michael's text to Marcus Rivera. Conspiracy confirmed. Evidence of direct supervisor involvement. Janet Pierce, badge S1947, actively coordinating discrimination from ground. Need immediate investigation of entire chain of command. Another text to his director of flight operations. Pull complete flight records for Ashley Rodriguez, badge A6284 going back 7 years. Every complaint, every incident, every passenger who tried to report her. Also pull records for Captain Derek Shaw. I want everything on my desk tonight. He checked his watch. 1 hour and 27 minutes until landing. 46 hours and 58 minutes until Destiny's registration deadline. The reveal was coming soon, but not yet. He needed one final piece of evidence. He needed to document what happened when they landed. He needed to catch airport security attempting to detain Destiny based on Ashley's false report. He needed the captain's direct involvement captured on video, because Michael wasn't just firing bad employees. He was building a federal case that would dismantle the entire system that had protected them. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about making sure this could never happen again. Act 2 escalation and hidden observer. The cockpit door opened with a pneumatic hiss 53 minutes before landing. Captain Derek Shaw emerged like a figure from central casting. Perfectly pressed uniform. Silver hair combed with military precision. Captain's wings gleaming on his chest. At 6'3", he commanded physical space the way he commanded aircraft absolutely, without question. 26 years as a pilot had taught him that authority came not just from the wings on his uniform, but from how he carried himself through a cabin. He was currently being considered for promotion to VP of Flight Operations, the culmination of a career built on professionalism and by-the-book procedures. This was supposed to be a routine flight, no problems, no complications. Just another successful trip that would look good in his promotion review. Everything under control here. Ashley. His voice carried that practiced calm that made passengers relax instinctively, that made them believe everything was fine as long as the captain was watching. Command voice perfected over 2 decades. Ashley looked up from the galley with visible relief, like a soldier glad to see reinforcements arrive. Just handling a ticket verification issue. Captain, the passenger in seat 4B, she gestured toward Destiny with the same dismissive wave you'd use to point out spilled coffee. There are concerns about her ticket's legitimacy. Derek's eyes landed on Destiny. Something shifted in his expression. Nothing dramatic. Nothing most passengers would notice, but Michael, watching carefully from 7C with years of reading people in business negotiations, saw it, a hardening around the eyes, a slight tightening of the jaw, a microscopic nod of recognition that confirmed pre-existing assumptions. Derek saw exactly what Ashley saw, a black child in first class who didn't belong. He walked down the aisle with measured steps, each footfall deliberate, boots making soft sounds on carpet. He stopped at Destiny's row and looked down at her with an expression that managed to broadcast both concern and suspicion. The face of authority, questioning someone who'd already been judged guilty. Passengers in nearby seats stopped at mid-conversation. First class went quiet except for the engine's constant thrum. "What's your name, young lady?" His voice was firm but not yet hostile, giving her a chance to explain herself, to prove she deserved to be there. Destiny looked up at him, and Michael could see her physically trying to make herself smaller in the seat, shoulders hunching, body curling inward. "Destiny Brooks, sir." "Destiny Brooks," Derek repeated slowly, rolling the name around like he was tasting something questionable. His eyes scanned her, the wrinkled navy dress, the worn backpack at her feet, the math textbooks spread across her tray table. "And who purchased this ticket for you, Destiny?" "My parents, sir." "Your parents?" He exchanged a meaningful look with Ashley that communicated volumes without words. "I see what you mean. This doesn't add up." "I see. And what exactly do your parents do for a living?" The question landed like a slap across the face. Margaret Torres in 3A leaned forward sharply, her attorney instinct screaming that this was illegal questioning. Patricia Sullivan in 6C put a hand over her mouth, tears forming. Even James Hartley in 5D, who'd been ambivalent until now, felt his stomach turn with disgust. This wasn't a security question. This was an economic interrogation. Destiny's voice came out small and ashamed, and that shame and the fact that a child felt ashamed of her parents' honest work made Michael's hands ball into white-knuckled fists. "My dad works at Detroit Assembly Plant. My mom cleans offices." Derek nodded slowly, deliberately, as if Destiny had just confirmed every suspicion. "Factory work and cleaning." "I see." He paused, letting the words hang in the recycled air, letting the judgment settle over the cabin. "And they just happened to have $3,000 lying around for a first-class ticket. That's quite a savings account for a factory worker and a cleaner." "They saved for 8 months," Destiny whispered, her voice carrying both pride and humiliation. Pride in her parents' sacrifice. Humiliation that she had to justify it to strangers. 8 months, Derek repeated with barely concealed skepticism dripping from every syllable. "Destiny, let me ask you something. Did your parents explain to you that using someone else's frequent flyer miles without permission is theft? That's a federal crime. Did they explain that to you?" We didn't steal anything, because we've had significant issues lately," Derek continued, his voice carrying to every seat in first class, ensuring everyone heard this public accusation. "Passengers using stolen miles or hacked accounts to upgrade themselves to cabins they can't legitimately afford. The airline industry loses $47 million every year to this kind of fraud. It's an epidemic that hurts legitimate passengers like everyone else in this cabin." He pulled out his iPhone, not his company-issued device, but his personal phone, and held it up in front of Destiny's face. "I'm going to need to take your photograph for my security report. Company policy when we have suspected ticket fraud." The camera flash went off directly in Destiny's face. She flinched, and Michael captured that flinch on video, a 13-year-old child recoiling from being photographed like a criminal suspect. "When we land," Derek said, pocketing his phone with the satisfied air of a job well done, "airport security will be meeting the aircraft. They'll need to verify your ticket's purchase history and possibly your parents' financial records to ensure the money used wasn't obtained fraudulently. Credit card fraud, identity theft. These things need to be investigated thoroughly." "Please, sir." Destiny's voice cracked, the composure she'd been maintaining for hours finally breaking. "I have a competition, national STEM competition. I can't miss registration. It closes tomorrow at 6. Please." Derek's expression showed no sympathy whatsoever. Just the cold calculation of a man who believed he was doing his duty. Well, that depends on whether your ticket is legitimate, doesn't it? If everything checks out, you'll be on your way. If we find evidence of fraud, he let the implication dangle like a threat. He turned to Ashley. I want a full incident report filed before we land. Include photographs of the passenger, copies of the questionable ticket, detailed account of her behavior when questioned about the ticket's origin, and note any evasive responses or inconsistent statements. Already documenting, Captain, Ashley said with barely concealed smugness, pulling out her phone to show him the notes she'd been compiling. Good work. Derek addressed the entire cabin, his voice taking on a tone of professional concern that sounded practiced, rehearsed. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption to your flight. We take security and ticket fraud very seriously at Skybound Airways. Federal regulations require us to investigate any suspicious circumstances. Your safety and the integrity of our service are our top priorities. Thank you for your patience while we handle this matter appropriately. He returned to the cockpit, leaving Destiny sitting in her seat like an accused criminal awaiting sentencing. Tears were flowing freely now. She didn't have the strength left to hold them back. Her math competition materials lay scattered on her tray table, mocking her with the future that was slipping through her fingers like water. Around her, first class had divided into warring factions. Some passengers looked deeply uncomfortable, like Patricia Sullivan, who was crying silently into her husband's shoulder. Some looked satisfied, like Brad Whitmore and Karen Morrison, who nodded approvingly at the captain's professional handling of the situation. Some looked angry, like Margaret Torres, whose fingers were flying across her phone screen, documenting everything for the lawsuit she was already mentally constructing. And some were recording everything Amon's TikTok camera, Marcus's 4K professional setup, Margaret's phone, plus at least 6 other passengers who'd pulled out devices to capture what they sensed was becoming something much bigger than a routine flight. In the galley, Ashley pulled out her personal phone again. Michael's angle from 7C captured the screen reflection in the polished metal surface. Her text to Janet Pierce, Captain fully on board, full security report filed with his signature. Passenger now, crying, making scene, getting more suspicious by the minute. Janet's response, perfect. Emotional behavior is classic guilt response. Document her demeanor. Use phrases like increasingly agitated and unable to provide coherent explanation. Photos. Ashley Shaw took several. I have copies. Also confiscated boarding pass, so she has 0 documentation now. When security boards, she'll have nothing to prove seat assignment. Janet, excellent technique. Contacted LAX operations. Officers Kim and Lopez will board to detain. Told them passenger may be part of larger fraud ring we've been tracking. That'll ensure they take it seriously and don't just do cursory check. The smoking gun was now a smoking arsenal. Michael zoomed in on the reflection, ensuring every word was captured in sharp focus. Then he composed rapid-fire text to Marcus Rivera, General Counsel. Captain Derek Shaw, badge C8841, filed false security report against minor passenger, photographed child without parental consent, coordinated with flight attendant in discrimination conspiracy, federal charges recommended immediately. To Jennifer Walsh, VP of Human Resources. Janet Pierce, badge S1947, actively coordinating discrimination from ground headquarters. Text evidence captured showing systematic conspiracy. Suspend immediately upon landing, pending FBI investigation. Pull all personnel files she's handled. To Richard Thompson, VP of Operations. Your supervisor is coordinating a federal civil rights violation in real time via text message. Emergency meeting tonight, 8 p.m. My office. Bring your lawyer. Be prepared to explain why you've been covering for her for years. Michael's final text went to Special Agent Rebecca Torres at the FBI's Los Angeles field office. They'd met 2 years ago at a corporate security conference, and she'd given him her direct line for exactly situations like this, when corporate crimes intersected with civil rights violations. Rebecca, Michael Patterson, Skybound CEO, active civil rights violation on Flight 892, landing LAX in 52 minutes. Minor victim, captain filed false security report, supervisor coordinating conspiracy from ground, multiple federal violations. Can you meet the aircraft with federal authority? Her response came 30 seconds later. On my way, Have legal counsel meet me at gate. Need all documentation ready for immediate federal review. This is priority. Michael allowed himself the smallest grim smile. Ashley Rodriguez and Derek Shaw thought they were filing a routine security report on a fraudulent passenger. What they'd actually done was create a federal case so thoroughly documented that even the most expensive lawyers in America couldn't crack it. Janet Pierce thought she was protecting her employee. What she'd actually done was text a confession to conspiracy directly into evidence that Michael's phone had captured. Richard Thompson thought his department was running smoothly. What he was about to discover was that his entire Western region management structure was about to collapse under federal investigation. From his seat in 7C, Michael watched Destiny crying quietly in 4B, her math textbooks abandoned, her dreams crumbling, her parents' sacrifice turning into a nightmare played out at 35,000 feet. 46 hours and 43 minutes until her registration deadline, 52 minutes until this plane landed. And then Michael Patterson was going to show Ashley Rodriguez, Derek Shaw, Janet Pierce, and every other person who'd built or enabled this system of discrimination exactly what happened when a CEO actually enforced the principles he'd built his company on. Power. Michael had learned over 44 years, wasn't about what you could take from people, it was about what you could protect them from. And he was about to protect Destiny Brooks and every future passenger from ever experiencing this again. Part 2B, the conspiracy text. Evidence captured. 8 minutes after Captain Shaw returned to the cockpit, Ashley stepped into the forward galley and pulled the privacy curtain most of the way closed. Through the gap, Michael could see her pulling out her personal iPhone with its sparkly pink case. Jarringly cheerful given what she was using it for. She didn't realize that the galley's stainless steel coffee maker surface acted like a curved mirror, reflecting her screen directly towards seat 7C at an angle that made the text conversation perfectly legible. Michael zoomed his camera in slowly, carefully, ensuring the reflection stayed in sharp focus. Every word appeared on his screen clear enough to be admitted as evidence in federal court. Ashley to Janet P. Supervisor. Shaw fully involved now. Security report filed with captain's signature. 4B passenger getting increasingly emotional. Behavioral evidence stacking up. 3 seconds. The response Janet Pierce. Perfect work. Emotional response indicates guilty conscience. Your incident report should emphasize agitated behavior and evasive answers. Shaw's photos. Ashley. Multiple angles. Also kept her boarding pass. Zero documentation now. Security will have nothing to verify her seat against. Janet. Exactly the technique I taught you. LAX operations confirmed. Kim and Lopez will detain for extended questioning. Mention possible fraud ring connection. They'll take it seriously. Should buy us 2-3 hours minimum. Maybe more if they involve fraud investigators. Ashley, what if other passengers complain about how I handled this? Janet, let them complain. You followed protocol for suspicious behavior. Shaw backs your assessment. That's 2 professional opinions versus 1 questionable ticket. Document any passengers who interfere, flag them for future screening. 3A and 5D particularly problematic. Ashley, noted. Thanks for the support. You're the only supervisor who actually backs me up. Janet, that's because I understand that maintaining standards isn't racism. It's professionalism. Trust your instincts about who fits where. 6 years ago, you would have let this slide. Now you recognize patterns. That's growth. Ashley sent back a thumbs up emoji. Janet, remember at the gate, stand near passenger. Look concerned but professional. Let Shaw do the talking with officers. Your job is hand over the confiscated boarding pass and your photos. Tone should be regretful, like you wish this wasn't necessary but security requires it. Ashley, make it look like I'm sad this is happening but just following rules. Janet, exactly. We're not villains. We're professionals doing difficult work. She created this situation by trying to access services she likely didn't pay for. We're responding appropriately to protect other passengers. You did nothing wrong. Ashley tucked her phone away, smoothed her uniform, and stepped back into the cabin wearing a smile that looked perfectly professional. Only Michael knew he'd just captured a complete documentary record of conspiracy involving multiple skybound employees coordinating to violate a child's civil rights while using corporate language to justify discrimination. He immediately forwarded the video clip to his legal team with a message that would change everything. Smoking gun attached. Text exchange between badge A6284 and S1947 shows 1 coordinated discrimination, 2 false reporting with captain's involvement, 3 systematic training in profiling using coded language, 4 retaliation plans against passengers who objected, 5 supervisor actively manufacturing evidence. This is federal conspiracy under 18 U.S.C. 241. Recommend immediate law enforcement coordination. Marcus Rivera's response was immediate. Jesus Christ, this is prosecutable. Calling DOJ Civil Rights Division now. This goes beyond termination. This is federal prison territory. Jennifer Walsh from HR. Evidence shows Janet's been training multiple employees in discrimination techniques. Need federal review of entire training program. How many others has she corrupted? FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres received. That text exchange is conspiracy gold. We'll need warrant for Pierce's complete phone records and all training materials she's developed. This could be RICO if the pattern extends beyond these 3. Michael leaned back in his seat, phone still recording, legal apps still logging violations. The list had grown to 9 separate federal crimes, multiple conspirators, and a paper trail that stretched from the aircraft to corporate headquarters to ground operations. Ashley Rodriguez thought she was protecting the airline from fraud. Janet Pierce thought she was training employees in security awareness. Victor Derek Shaw thought he was following proper protocol. Richard Thompson thought his department was functioning smoothly. What they'd actually created was a federal case so airtight that prosecutors could use it as a template for civil rights violation training. Michael checked the cabin display, 47 minutes until landing, 46 hours and 32 minutes until Destiny's registration deadline. He looked at Destiny in seat 4B. She'd given up trying to study. Math textbooks closed, arms wrapped around herself, staring out the window at clouds below with the hollow expression of someone whose hope had been systematically dismantled by adults who had power over her. A child whose only crime was existing while black in first class. Not for much longer. In 47 minutes, Michael Patterson was going to show them all what real accountability looked like. Part 2C, Passenger Reactions, The Divided Cabin. First class had become a psychological battlefield where every passenger had chosen a side, whether they realized it or not. The silent sympathizers, Margaret Torres in 3A, had stopped even pretending to work. Her laptop was closed and forgotten. For the past hour, she'd been building a federal case on her phone. Time-stamped videos, photographs of badge numbers, screenshots of cabin interactions, detailed notes written with the precision of someone who'd spent 18 years as a civil rights attorney. She'd represented 47 airline discrimination victims. She knew the patterns, knew the playbook, knew exactly how companies buried complaints and protected employees. But she'd never had documentation this complete. Multiple camera angles, live witnesses, text evidence of conspiracy, a minor victim that would make federal prosecutors prioritize this case. Her text to her senior partner, civil rights goldmine in progress. Minor victim, multiple federal violations, video evidence from 4+ angles. Flight lands 5:15 p.m. LAX. Need full litigation team ready to file by morning. Response, standing by. This could be the case we've been waiting for to force industry-wide change. But Margaret was also wrestling with guilt. She'd spoken up 3 times. 3 times she'd challenged Ashley's behavior. But had she done enough? Should she have stood up physically, blocked Ashley from harassing Destiny, demanded to speak to the captain earlier? Her daughter Gabriella was Destiny's age. If Gabriella were in that seat, Margaret pushed the thought away and kept documenting. Because documentation was power, evidence was undeniable, and she was going to make sure every second of Destiny's humiliation was preserved for the reckoning that was coming. James Hartley in 5D sat with his Wall Street Journal unread, wrestling with a different kind of guilt. He'd spoken up twice. Just give the kid her meal, and this is ridiculous. But when Ashley pushed back with talk about protocols and fraud prevention, he stopped, retreated into silence, told himself it wasn't his business, wasn't his fight. He flew skybound 3 times a week, platinum elite status, priority boarding, free upgrades, dedicated customer service line. He'd worked hard for that status. He didn't want to lose it. But was that status worth this? Worth watching a child be systematically destroyed while he stayed silent to protect airline perks? The shame sat in his stomach like a stone. Patricia Sullivan in 6C couldn't stop crying. 34 years teaching elementary school had taught her to recognize that look on a child's face, the look of a brilliant student who'd been told she was less than, who'd been made to doubt her own worth. She'd seen it before. In 1983, teaching in Atlanta, she'd watched a colleague accuse a black student named Marcus Johnson of cheating on a math test because students like him couldn't possibly solve problems that advanced. Patricia had said nothing. Marcus had been suspended for 3 days. He'd never been the same in class after that. His confidence shattered. 42 years of regret for that silence. Now she was watching it happen again. Different decade, different child, same devastating pattern. And once again, she was too afraid to do more than whisper protest to her husband. "We should say something," she told Frank through tears. "Like what?" he whispered back. The captain already made his decision. And so Patricia did what she'd done with Marcus Johnson, sat in her seat, watched it happen, and told herself there was nothing she could do. The tears streaming down her face were for both destiny and for her own cowardice. The suspicious enablers. Brad Whitmore in 3B had convinced himself he was being rational, not racist. His financial analyst brain had done the math. 13-year-old black girl, parents earning maybe $60,000 combined annual income, $3,200 first-class ticket. That was more than 5% of their annual income for a single flight. The numbers didn't add up. And when numbers didn't add up, that meant fraud. Simple logic. Nothing to do with race, just probability and pattern recognition. He'd completely failed to examine why he'd never questioned whether the elderly white woman in 1A could afford her ticket, or whether the young white man in 2C might have used fraudulent miles. Those thoughts had never even entered his mind. Brad had convinced himself that questioning black passengers' finances was risk management, not racism. "Someone's got to maintain standards," he muttered to his seatmate, genuinely believing it. Karen Morrison in 4C had a more direct philosophy. Some people deserved first class, and some people didn't. She'd worked 16-hour days building her real estate career from nothing. She'd earned her success, earned her money, earned her first-class seat through merit and hard work. People who couldn't afford first class should fly economy. That was the natural order of things. That was how society functioned. You worked hard. You got rewarded. You didn't work hard enough. You flew in the back. This girl's parents were working class, economy jobs, economy income. So why was their daughter in first class? It didn't make sense. It violated the meritocracy Karen believed she lived in. She'd never examined the systemic reasons why a brilliant black girl's parents had to work 3 times as hard as white families to afford the same opportunities. Never questioned why she automatically assumed first class was for people like her. The activist, Marta Martinez in 6A, was shaking with adrenaline. Phone battery at 28%, live stream viewer count at 127,000, and climbing like a rocket. "Y'all, we're 73 minutes into watching this beautiful black girl get destroyed by this airline," Emba whispered urgently into her phone. She asked for ginger ale. Ginger ale. Now the captain's filed a security report. They've stolen her boarding pass, denied her food, and they're planning to have her arrested when we land. This is what racism looks like in 2025, dressed up in protocol and security concerns, but it's the same hatred. Comments were a flood. "Someone get a lawyer on that plane now. Skybound Airlines racist. This child is somebody's daughter. Badge A6284 needs prison." Marcus Rodriguez in 8A had moved from phone to professional 4K camera. As a documentary filmmaker who'd won Sundance for his housing discrimination film, he recognized this as history happening in real time. His footage was already uploaded to secure cloud storage. 3 copies, multiple locations. No way this evidence could disappear. CNN had texted crew dispatched to LAX. This goes national tonight. The viral moment was building, passenger by passenger, phone by phone, all of them documenting a system failing a child. None of them knew that the most powerful person on the plane was sitting in economy, recording everything, waiting for exactly the right moment. That moment was 43 minutes away. Social media explosion. Emma's TikTok live stream had become the digital ground zero for something that would define airline accountability for a generation. Emma Martinez, UCLA, live of racism at 35,000 feet, viewers 234,000, and climbing duration 1 hour 47 minutes, shares 12,400 in the last hour alone. For anyone just joining, Emma whispered, her voice tight with controlled fury. Let me recap this nightmare. This black girl, maybe 13 or 14, asked for ginger ale because she felt sick. The flight attendant, white woman with blonde hair and badge A6284, literally said, "You people always think rules don't apply to you." She refused the ginger ale. She scrolled to her saved clips, showing them to camera. Then this attendant made her walk to economy to use the bathroom because first-class bathrooms are only for verified passengers. Then she skipped her entirely during meal service. Now the captain has accused her of fraud, photographed her like a criminal, and filed a security report. They're having her detained when we land. The comment section was pure chaos. Justice for all. I'm forwarding this to every news station, mom of three. That's somebody's baby being traumatized, Pilot Mike 87. I'm a pilot. This violates every protocol. This is pure racism. Karen 99. Maybe she was suspicious. Emma Martinez Zuclaukishom, Karen 99, suspicious for asking for ginger ale. Viewer count hit 267,000. Twitter. Marcus Rodriguez's thread goes viral. Marcus Rod Films documentary filmmaker. 47K followers. Thread. Witnessing the most blatant in-flight racism I've ever documented. 13-year-old black girl systematically discriminated against on Skybound Airlines, Flight 892, Detroit LAX. Everything captured in 4K, 19. Attached video clip of Ashley denying ginger ale. Audio crystal clear. Retweets 89,000 in 45 minutes. Likes 312,000. Quote tweets 15,000. Tweet 39. The captain came out and questioned this child about her parents' jobs. What do your parents do for a living? When she said factory worker and office cleaner, he implied they couldn't afford the ticket, then photographed her like a suspect. Attached video of Captain Shaw's interrogation. Verified replies. Senator Johnson C. A contacting FAA immediately. Unacceptable. NAACP. Legal. Documenting this thread, federal investigation warranted. Former FAA inspector. That captain violated multiple regs. License should be reviewed. News outlets mobilizing TMZ 18 minutes after Marcus's first tweet. Breaking Skybound Airlines racism scandal. Child threatened with arrest. Views 234,000 in first 20 minutes. CNN aviation correspondent tweet. Crew en route to LAX Terminal 4. If these videos are authentic, this is the biggest airline discrimination story since United's dragging incident. Developing. Local LA stations. 3 news crews racing to LAX. Helicopters on standby. This was about to be everywhere. Hashtags trending worldwide. Hashtag justice for destiny. 127,000 posts. Emma coined it hashtag Skybound Airlines. 234,000 posts. Hashtag badge. A6284. 67,000 posts. Ashley's badge going viral. Hashtag racism. At 35,000. 89,000 posts. Back on flight 892. None of the conspirators had any idea that the world was watching. Ashley was chatting with another flight attendant in the galley, laughing about something completely unrelated. Derek was in the cockpit running landing checklists. Janet Pierce was in her Chicago office, confident her coaching had prevented a PR problem. They were about to become the most hated people on the internet. Michael Patterson in 7C watched the social media metrics on his own phone and felt a cold satisfaction. The public pressure would ensure FBI and DA took this seriously. That corporate cover-ups would be impossible. That justice would be swift, public, and permanent. 40 minutes until landing. The reckoning was inevitable now. Destiny's breaking point. Destiny Brooks sat in seat 4B and tried to solve problem 47 for the 16th time, but her hands were shaking too badly to write legibly. Problem 47. Determine the eigenvalues for matrix A where A equals 3, and 2, 4, 1. Show all work. She'd solved this type of problem hundreds of times. Eigenvalue equations were as familiar to her as breathing. But right now, with her vision blurred and stomach empty and passengers staring at her like she'd committed a crime, the numbers refused to cooperate. Her pencil hovered over paper. She wrote the first step, eigenvalue equation, det A, I equals 0. Then her hand cramped. The pencil clattered to the tray table. She thought about her father. Right now, Dad was probably on hour 11 of his shift at Detroit Assembly. Same repetitive motion. Install door panel, secure bolts. moved to next car that he'd been doing for 16 years. His back would be screaming, his shoulders locked up, his eyes feeling like broken glass. For 8 months, he'd worked 16-hour days just so she could sit in this seat. $2,100. That's what Dad's sacrifice had bought. $2,100 of this nightmare. She thought about her mother. Mom was probably at one of her weekend cleaning jobs right now, on her knees scrubbing toilets until they gleamed, emptying trash that reeked of spoiled food, mopping floors with hands that bled from the cheap chemicals and repetitive motion. $1,184. That's what Mom's pain had earned. $1,184 of this humiliation. And Aunt Regina, the $950 she'd needed for car repairs, but gave to her niece instead. Now Aunt Regina was probably riding 2 buses to work because her Camry had finally died completely. Also, Destiny could have this ticket, this seat, this opportunity, and it was all falling apart. The anger came suddenly, burning through the fear and shame like wildfire through dead grass. Destiny picked up her pencil, gripped it hard enough that her knuckles went white, and forced herself to focus. Dead A, I am 3, 1, 2, 4 miles, 3, 3 plus and 8, 2 plus 5 quadratic formula. She could do this. Equals 2, 4, 20, 2 equals 2, 16, 2, 2, 4i, 2 and 1, 2i, eigenvalues in 1 plus 2i, equals 1, 2i. She wrote the answer and circled it with shaking hands. The handwriting was barely legible. Tear stains blurred some numbers, but the math was correct. See, I can still do it. Even now, Bossam, even with everything falling apart, even with Ashley Rodriguez and Captain Shaw trying to break me, I belong here. She sat up straighter in her seat, wiped her face with the back of her hand, closed her math textbook, and packed it carefully in her backpack. Her parents hadn't worked 16-hour days so their daughter would learn to accept discrimination. They'd sacrificed so she could have opportunities to prove that excellence has no color. When security questioned her at the gate, and they would, she'd answer their questions calmly. She'd verify her ticket. She'd call her parents if needed. She'd do whatever it took to make that competition registration deadline. And then she was going to win. Not for herself, for every person who'd sacrificed for her, for every kid told they don't belong, for every parent who worked themselves into the ground to give their children a chance. She was going to win, and nobody would forget it. 39 minutes until landing. Destiny Brooks was ready. Michael's final preparation. 39 minutes until touchdown. Michael's phone showed 19% battery. Enough. The portable charger was already connected. His evidence folder was catastrophic for everyone involved. Video 3 hours, 47 minutes total. Badge numbers clearly visible throughout all verbal interactions captured with clean audio. Text messages reflected in galley mirror. Continuous footage of Destiny's emotional deterioration. Legal violations documented. Civil Rights Act Title 6, Race Discrimination 49, USC 46504, FAA Passenger Rights Violations, 18 USC 1001, False Statements, Derek's Report, 18 USC 241, Conspiracy to Violate Civil Rights, 18 USC 242, Deprivation of Rights Under Color of Law, 14 CFR Part 382, Air Carrier Access Violations, FTC Act Section 5, Unfair Deceptive Practices. State law, false imprisonment, planned detention, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Michael had been coordinating ground operations via text to Marcus Rivera General Counsel. Evidence package complete. 8 federal violations with video, audio, and text proof. FBI meeting plane. Prepare immediate termination paperwork A6284 and C8841. Full suspension S1947. Marcus FBI confirmed. DOD investigators standing by. Media crews assembling at gate. Biggest airline discrimination case in decades. Narrative control critical. To Jennifer Walsh, VP HR. Suspend Janet Pierce immediately upon landing. Text messages show systematic coordination. Pull every complaint she's handled. I want names of all victims. Jennifer, oh God, Michael, this implicates multiple supervisors. Western Region Management is compromised. To Richard Thompson, VP Operations. Emergency board meeting, 8 p.m. tonight. Your supervisor coordinated federal civil rights violations. Explain how that happened under your watch. Bring counsel. Richard, Michael, I can't explain. Michael, save it. Bring your lawyer. To FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres. Evidence package sent. 3 HR 47 min video. Conspiracy confirmed. Minor victim. Can you review before landing? Rebecca, received. Michael, this is one of the most documented cases I've seen. Federal charges certain. See you at the gate. Michael checked the cabin display 35 minutes to Los Angeles. He looked around first class one final time, cataloging everything for memory destiny in 4B, tear-stained but sitting straighter now. Something determined in her posture, Ashley in galley oblivious, laughing with a coworker. No idea hundreds of thousands were watching Derek in cockpit running checklists, thinking about his promotion, unaware his career was over. Margaret in 3A, documenting relentlessly, building an airtight case. Emma in 6A, live streaming to 287,000 viewers, accidentally creating history. Marcus in 8A, professional footage that would appear on every news network within hours. Of Michael's childhood memory surfaced again. His mother's trembling hands at that Greyhound station in 1989. The security guard's third demand to see tickets while white families walk past unchallenged. He'd promised himself then, if I ever have power, I'll use it to protect people like Mom. 35 years later, he had that power. In 35 minutes, he was going to use it. Act 3, the reveal and immediate consequences. The plane's wheels kissed the LAX runway with a gentle thump. 5 hours and 12 minutes after leaving Detroit, Flight 892 had arrived in Los Angeles. Destiny felt the deceleration press her back against the leather seat. Through the window, California sun setting orange and pink across the tarmac. Palm trees in the distance. Terminal 4 growing larger. 45 hours and 19 minutes until registration closed. But first, airport security. Captain Derek Shaw's voice came through the intercom. Professional and cold. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Local time 5:13 p.m. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened until we reach the gate. Airport security will be boarding to handle a security matter. Thank you for flying Skybound Airlines. The announcement sent a ripple through the cabin. Security matter meant someone had done something wrong. Passengers turned toward first class, toward Destiny, confirming what many suspected. The black girl in 4B was the problem. Emma's TikTok exploded. Here we go. They're really detaining her. Someone stop this. This is about to be everywhere. Viewer count 312,000 people watching live. The plane taxied to Terminal 4. Gate 47. Michael watched through his window as the jet bridge extended with a hydraulic whine. At the gate, 2 LAX security officers waiting, plus 3 TV cameras, reporters with microphones, and a crowd of airport staff with phones out. The story had gone viral enough that media had mobilized. Perfect. The plane stopped. Seatbelt sign dinged off. Passengers and economy immediately stood, reaching for overhead bins. Please remain seated while we handle a security matter, a flight attendant announced. Thank you. The security officers entered. Michael could see them clearly from 7C. Officer David Kim, Asian American, late 30s. Nameplate reading D. Kim, LX Security, face showing discomfort. This wasn't normal protocol. Officer Jennifer Lopez, Hispanic, mid-40s, nameplate J. Lopez, LAX Security. An expression of a mother who didn't like what she was being asked to do. Ashley met them at first class with professional concern. Officers, thank you for responding. The passenger in question is seat 4B. They walked down the aisle so. Every phone in first class came up. Emma's TikTok, Marcus's 4K camera, Margaret's phone, plus 6 other passengers capturing everything. Officer Kim stopped at Destiny's row, voice gentle but words devastating. Miss, we need you to come with us to verify your ticket purchase. Destiny looked up with exhausted eyes. Sir, I have a competition registration in 45 hours. If you detain me more than 2 hours, I miss it. Please, we'll make it quick, Officer Lopez said, not unkindly. Captain filed a security report. We have to follow protocol. Ashley stepped forward, pulling Destiny's confiscated boarding pass from her apron. Here's the ticket in question. The passenger couldn't adequately explain how her parents, factory worker and cleaner, could afford $3,200 first class, concerns about fraudulent Purchase. Margaret Torres stood from 3A. Officers, I'm Margaret Torres, civil rights attorney. I've documented this entire flight. This child has been subjected to systematic discrimination violating federal law. Before you proceed, I'm advising you may be participating in a civil rights violation. Officer Kim hesitated. This was getting complicated. Ma'am, we're just responding to a captain's report. Captain's reports don't supersede constitutional rights. Margaret interrupted sharply. This child's been denied service, publicly humiliated, and falsely accused without evidence. I have video documentation. Emma held up her phone. So do I. 312,000 people watching live. Hashtag Justice for Destiny trending worldwide. Brad Whitmore scoffed from 3B. Everyone's playing activist. Officers, ignore these people and do your job. The job is violating a child's rights. Margaret shot back. And millions are watching. Officer Lopez looked increasingly uncomfortable. 16 years in security. She dealt with drunk passengers, belligerent travelers, actual threats. This felt different. This felt like a child being targeted. Officers, Ashley said firmly. Captain Shaw filed an official FAA security report. If you don't act, you're potentially compromising aviation security. Derek emerged from the cockpit in full uniform. His height and authority filled the space. I'm Captain Derek Shaw, badge C8841. I filed formal security report under FAA Regulation 121.538. This passenger requires verification. Are you refusing to enforce federal aviation protocol? The weight of his authority, his uniform, his 26 years, it all pressed down on the officers. Officer Kim was trapped. A captain directly invoking FAA regulations. He couldn't refuse without supervisor approval. Miss, I'm sorry, but I need you to, excuse me. The voice came from economy, calm, quiet, but with an undercurrent of absolute authority that made everyone stop. Michael Patterson stood from seat 7C. He was tall but dressed like any middle-aged passenger. Worn jeans, faded bull's cap, plain t-shirt, scuffed sneakers. Nothing about him screamed power or wealth. He stepped into the aisle. Sir, please return to your seat, Officer Kim said. We're handling a security matter. I'm afraid I can't do that. Michael walked forward with measured steps until he stood in first class. Every phone camera swiveled to follow. Emma's TikTok chat exploded. Who is that? Plot twist incoming. Someone explain. Michael reached into his worn wallet and pulled out a card, handed it to Officer Kim. Officer Kim looked at it, eyes widened, looked at Michael. Back at card. Shit. In Skybound Airlines ownership, verification name, Michael Patterson title, founder and chief executive officer, employee ID, CEO 001 authorization all access, holographic seal, photo ID, impossible to fake. The cabin went absolutely silent. Ashley's face drained white. Every drop of blood left her cheeks. Derek Shaw froze in the cockpit doorway. Recognition dawning like slow horror. Brad in 3B. Who the hell is that? Margaret in 3A small. Knowing smile. Emma's TikTok 398,000. 452,000. 537,000 viewers as the plot twist of the century unfolded. Michael walked past the stunned security officers and crouched beside Destiny's seat. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Chicago accent fully present. Destiny, my name is Michael Patterson. I own this airline, and I need you to know something right now, before anything else happens. Destiny looked at him with red, exhausted eyes. What you experienced today was wrong. It was illegal. It is not your fault. His voice was firm but kind. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You hear me? Destiny nodded weakly. You belong in first class. You belong anywhere you want to be. And I'm going to make sure everyone who hurt you faces consequences. Okay. Okay, Destiny whispered. Michael stood. The gentleness vanished like a switch flipping. He turned to Ashley Rodriguez. Part 3B, the firing. Swift justice, Michael's voice cut through the cabin like a blade. Employee badge A6284, Ashley Rodriguez, 6 years, 7 months with Skybound Airlines. Ashley's mouth opened. No sound came out. Michael held up his phone, pressed play. Ashley's voice filled the cabin. You people always think rules don't apply to you. Your kind always has some excuse. Passengers in seat 4B typically have a certain profile. The cabin listened to Ashley condemn herself. Michael stopped playback. I've been in seat 7C for 4 hours recording everything, every word, every action, every violation of federal law and company policy that I personally wrote. He pulled up his tablet, displayed Ashley's personnel file for Officer Kim to see, 28 formal complaints over 6 years, 51 informal complaints buried by Supervisor Janet Pierce. Badge A6284 appears in 6 videos from previous flights showing similar behavior. Ashley Rodriguez, you're fired. Effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be mailed. Security will escort you off this aircraft. You are permanently banned from all skybound property. Ashley's legs gave out. She grabbed a seat back for support. And the FBI will be contacting you about federal civil rights charges. Michael turned to Derek Shaw. Captain Derek Shaw, badge C8841, 26 years with this airline. Derek tried to maintain authority. Mr. Patterson, I was following standard security protocols. Michael pressed play on another clip. Derek's voice, what do your parents do for a living? Destiny. And they just happen to have $3,000 lying around. That's quite a savings account for a factory worker and a cleaner. Michael stopped it. That's not a security question. Captain, that's class discrimination. You threatened a 13-year-old child with federal prosecution. You filed a false report. You photographed her without parental consent. You abused your authority as pilot in command to intimidate a passenger based on her race. Derek's face went red. I've given this airline 26 years, and you destroyed all 26 of them in 4 hours, Michael said coldly. You are grounded, effective immediately. Your pilot's license is under FAA review. I will personally testify against you. Get off my plane. The cabin was silent except for phones recording. Emma's TikTok, 687,000 live viewers. Comments moving too fast to read, yes is justice. This is accountability. I'm crying. Michael wasn't finished. He pressed the intercom button, connecting to the entire aircraft. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michael Patterson. I'm the founder and CEO of Skybound Airlines. What I'm about to tell you will change this company and this industry. In economy, passengers stopped gathering bags. Everyone was listening. For 4 hours, I've been sitting in seat 7C dressed like I was going to a Bulls game. Why, 3 weeks ago, I received an anonymous email containing videos of discrimination on my flights. 19 incidents. Passengers of color denied service, questioned, treated with suspicion while white passengers received champagne. He paused, letting it sink in. Today, I witnessed it myself. This young woman, Destiny Brooks, 13 years old, mathematics prodigy accepted into the national STEM competition, was systematically discriminated against by my employees. Margaret Torres was openly crying. Patricia Sullivan, too. Michael continued, Destiny's parents, James Brooks, assembly line worker, and Patricia Brooks, office cleaner, saved 8 months to buy her this ticket. They worked triple shifts and weekend jobs they borrowed from family. Why? Because their daughter was flying alone for the first time, and they wanted her safe. His voice hardened. Instead, flight attendant Ashley Rodriguez denied her service, forced her to use economy bathrooms, denied her food, confiscated her boarding pass, and accused her of fraud. Captain Derek Shaw questioned her about her parents' jobs, photographed her like a criminal, filed a false security report, and arranged for her detention. The plane was silent. But it's worse. Ashley Rodriguez has 28 formal complaints in 6 years. Everyone marked no action required by her supervisor, Janet Pierce, badge S1947, who's been bearing complaints to protect her, and Janet reports to Richard Thompson, VP of Operations, who approved no action 23 times. Michael looked around the cabin. This isn't one racist flight attendant. This is systemic. This is what happens when companies print diversity in handbooks but don't enforce it. He addressed passengers directly. Some of you spoke up. Thank you. You did the right thing. Nodded to Margaret. James. Patricia, some of you agreed with what happened. Eyes on Brad. Karen. Ask yourself why you assumed a black child was a criminal while accepting every white passenger without question. And some of you knew it was wrong but said nothing. Silence enables abuse. Your silence today almost cost this girl her future. Brad shifted uncomfortably. Patricia sobbed harder. Michael pulled out his phone, dialed on speaker Richard Thompson. Richard, this is Michael. I'm in first class on flight 892. I've just witnessed Ashley Rodriguez and Captain Shaw commit multiple federal civil rights violations against a minor. And I have evidence your supervisor, Janet Pierce, has been coordinating discrimination and bearing complaints for years. Richard's voice went tight. Mr. Patterson, I'm sure there's an explanation. The explanation is your department's been covering up discrimination. Janet buried 127 complaints. You signed off on 23 involving Ashley Rodriguez. You either knew and didn't care, or didn't know because you failed at oversight. Either way, you're done. Sir, I can assure you, stop. I'm bringing in outside auditors to review your entire department. Anyone complicit gets terminated. Emergency board meeting tonight, 8 p.m., my office. Don't be late. He hung up. Michael turned to Ashley and Derek. Officers Kim and Lopez will escort you off. You're banned from all skybound property. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres is waiting at the gate. Ashley tried to speak. Only a sob came out. Michael pressed intercom again. To all skybound crew, what you witnessed is what happens when you violate our principles. We don't just talk about dignity, we enforce it. If you can't treat every passenger with respect regardless of race or income, you don't belong here. He released the button, turned to passengers. I owe you all an apology. What happened on this flight is my failure as CEO. I built this company on dignity, and my employees broke that promise. You deserve better. His voice softened slightly. Effective immediately. Skybound is implementing 5 changes. First Independent Oversight Board, 7 members, 3 from NAACP, ACLU, Equal Justice Initiative. They review every complaint within 48 hours. Margaret Torres typed furiously, documenting for the case she was building. Second, mandatory body cameras for all cabin crew. Always recording. Footage stored on independent servers. Available to passengers who file complaints. Some flight attendants in back shifted uncomfortably. Third, quarterly anti-bias training by civil rights experts. Real training with testing. Failure means termination. Fourth, anonymous reporting system for passengers and employees. $10,000 reward for reports leading to termination. The cabin stirred. $10,000 was serious money. Fifth, the Destiny Brooks Scholarship Fund, $5 million in endowment. Full ride scholarships for underrepresented students in STEM, named after the young woman whose mistreatment revealed these failures. Destiny looked up, fresh tears flowing, but different tears now. Recognition, validation. Michael crouched by her seat again. Destiny, you have a competition. I have a car waiting, black Escalade. Driver Carlos Mendez. He'll take you to the convention center. You'll arrive with 2 hours to spare. Thank you. Destiny's voice was small but steady. Don't thank me. You did nothing requiring my intervention except exist. This, he gestured at everything, is what should have happened from the beginning. You should have been treated with dignity. That's not something you earn. That's your right. He stood, addressed Officer Kim. Officers, I need statements from every passenger willing. FBI Special Agent Torres is at the gate. This is federal now. Officer Lopez took Ashley by the arm, gently, because despite everything, she was still human. Ashley walked down the aisle with head down, shoulders shaking, past passengers who'd watched her destroy a child and then watched her own life implode. Derek followed in his captain's uniform. Authority gone. Just a man who'd thrown away 26 years for biases he didn't even recognize. As they walked down the jet bridge, cameras flashed. Ashley's face, tear-stained, mascara running, would be on CNN within the hour. Michael addressed the cabin one last time. If anyone needs rebooking due to this delay, see our gate agents, full compensation. If you witness discrimination and want to provide a statement, please remain seated. He paused. And to everyone watching on social media, because I know you are, share this video. Change doesn't happen in darkness. Change happens when enough people see the truth and demand better. On my TikTok, gaining 892,000 viewers. The jet bridge opened fully. Michael could see the gate, news crews, FBI agents, airport administrators, hundreds with phones out. This was about to become the most viral airline incident in history. But first, Destiny needed to get to her competition. Part 3, see the aftermath. Immediate impact. Gate 47 at LAX looked like a movie premiere, except the star was a 13-year-old girl who just survived the worst flight of her life. 8 news cameras, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, Fox, BBC, plus 3 local LA stations. Dozens of airport staff and passengers with phones, FBI agents in dark suits, airport administrators, and Michael Patterson about to hold the most important press conference of his career. But first, Destiny. Michael had coordinated a protective corridor. Destiny walked between Michael left, Margaret Torres right, Officer Lopez behind, 3 adults forming a shield against media chaos. Destiny, how do you feel? Mr. Patterson, federal charges. Will there be a lawsuit? Michael held up one hand. Cameras focused. Brief statement, then Ms. Brooks needs to get to her competition. Reporters quieted. What happened on Flight 892 represents systemic failure. I take full responsibility for. My flight attendant and pilot subjected a 13-year-old to discrimination violating federal law, FAA regulations, and every principle this company was founded on. He spoke clearly, making eye contact with cameras. Effective immediately. Skybound implements 5 reforms, independent oversight board with NAACP, ACLU, and Equal Justice Initiative members reviewing complaints within 48 hours. Mandatory body cameras for all crew with footage on independent servers. Quarterly anti-bias training designed by civil rights experts with termination for non-compliance. Anonymous reporting system with $10,000 rewards. And the Destiny Brooks Scholarship Fund, $5 million for underrepresented students in STEM. Margaret was recording this. Evidence for the lawsuit she was reconsidering whether to file after seeing Michael's response. Reporter, have the employees been terminated? Yes, Ashley Rodriguez and Captain Shaw fired on aircraft, permanently banned. Federal charges pending. Another reporter, will Miss Brooks file suit? Margaret stepped forward. That's a decision for Mrs. Brooks and her family after she's recovered. Right now, she has a competition. Michael gestured to a black Escalade at the curb. Destiny, your car is waiting. Destiny moved toward it. A reporter stepped in front. Destiny, one question. What do you want people to know? Destiny stopped. Margaret squeezed her shoulder. Destiny looked at the camera, voice quiet but steady. I asked for ginger ale because I felt sick. That's all. And they treated me like I'd committed a crime. My parents worked triple shifts and weekend jobs for 8 months to buy that ticket. They're not criminals. They're not frauds. They're people who work harder than anyone should have just to give their daughter a chance. And I'm going to win that competition for them. She paused, gathering strength. If anyone's watching who's been told they don't belong somewhere, you do belong. Don't let anyone make you believe you don't. She got in the car. Margaret slid in beside her. Door closed. Carlos pulled away. Inside the terminal, Michael faced full press corps. 3 more questions. CNN, how did you happen to be on this flight? Traveling undercover. 3 weeks ago, I received anonymous email with videos of discrimination. I wanted to see my airline through passengers' eyes. Today, I witnessed exactly what the whistleblower described. MSNBC, will there be criminal charges? That's up to federal prosecutors. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres, he gestured to a woman in dark suit, is leading the investigation. Based on evidence, I believe federal civil rights charges are appropriate. Local station, message for other airlines. Michael looked directly at camera. Discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. It's bad for business. And in 25, with everyone carrying cameras, it's impossible to hide. Fix your cultures proactively, or you'll fix them reactively after becoming the next viral video. I recommend the former. He nodded. That's all? Thank you. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres approached. Michael, I need your evidence package. Already sent 3 hours, 47 minutes of video, text messages showing conspiracy, audio, Passenger statements. Rebecca looked impressed. Most documented case I've seen. Federal charges filed by week's end. Good. I want everyone involved prosecuted fully. Marcus Rivera appeared with tablet. Michael, legal update. Margaret Torres planning civil suit focused on individuals. Ashley, Derek, Janet, not the company. She called your response unprecedented corporate accountability. That's fair. The company failed. I failed, but we're fixing it. To Jennifer Walsh, VPHR, looked pale. Michael, Janet Pierce buried 127 complaints over 5 years. Not just Ashley, multiple employees. Western Region Management compromised. Emergency board meeting tonight. Thompson's done. Anyone who knew and didn't act is done. Maria Santos, PR director, monitored social media. TikTok video, 8.7 million views and climbing. Hashtag Justice for Destiny trending #1 worldwide. CNN footage on every major site. Biggest airline story since United dragging incident. Difference is, Michael said, we're not hiding. We're owning it and fixing it. Maria nodded. Stock dropped 4% initially but recovered. Investors responding positively to accountability. Michael looked at the gate where passengers from Flight 892 gave statements to FBI agents and reporters interviewed witnesses. Emma Martinez, still live streaming. Viewer count topped 1 million. Marcus Rodriguez being interviewed by CNN. His 4K footage playing on screens. Patricia Sullivan crying on ABC. I should have done more. We all should have. This was messy, public, uncomfortable, but it was real accountability happening in real time, witnessed by millions. Michael's phone buzzed. Text from his wife. Lorraine, baby, watching CNN. Your mama would be so proud. You did the right thing. Come home safe. Love you. Michael smiled for the first time in 5 hours. He'd built Skybound on the promise that every passenger deserves dignity. Today, he'd proven that promise meant something, but the work wasn't done. Ashley and Derek needed federal prosecution. Janet Pierce needed investigation. Richard Thompson needed accountability. 127 buried complaints needed reopening. And most importantly, Destiny Brooks needed to get to her competition, win that scholarship, and prove excellence has no color. Michael headed for his car. Emergency board meeting to prepare for. Federal investigation to support. Entire airline culture to transform. But first, he was calling Destiny's parents to tell them their daughter was safe. Federal investigation, swift justice, 3 hours after Flight 892 landed. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres sat across from Derek Shaw in the Los Angeles field office interrogation room. Derek had changed out of his uniform. He looked smaller in civilian clothes, polo shirt and khakis, just a middle-aged man whose world had collapsed. His attorney, David Goldstein, $650 hour Derek could barely afford, sat beside him looking deeply uncomfortable. Captain Shaw, let's discuss the false security report. Rebecca slid a document across the table. Derek's eyes scanned it, his own signature at the bottom. This report claims passenger Destiny Brooks, age 13, exhibited suspicious behavior consistent with unauthorized first-class access. What specifically did you observe that was suspicious? Derek's mouth worked. She seemed nervous. She was 13, flying alone, after your flight attendant had already denied her service. Of course she was nervous. Rebecca pulled up Michael's video on a tablet, pressed play. What do your parents do for a living? Destiny. And they just happened to have $3,000 lying around. That's quite a savings account for a factory worker and a cleaner. She paused it. That's not a security question. That's economic interrogation. You were questioning whether her parents could afford the ticket based on their occupations. Derek's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. When you filed this report, Rebecca continued, pulling up another document. You wrote passenger's explanation for ticket purchase inconsistent and suspicious. Recommend detention and financial verification. What was inconsistent? She said her parents saved 8 months. Derek said weakly. Which was true. We verified the ticket. James Brooks paid $2,100 in documented overtime cash. Patricia Brooks paid $1,184 from weekend jobs. They borrowed $950 from her sister. Every dollar legitimate. There was no fraud. Captain Shaw, just a black family saving money, and you deciding they couldn't possibly have earned it honestly. Silence filled the room like poison gas. Rebecca showed the text exchange between Ashley and Janet. Were you aware your flight attendant was coordinating with her supervisor to ensure this child's detention? No. I filed the report because Ashley flagged suspicious behavior. Ashley flagged her because of racial profiling, and you validated it with your authority. You photographed a minor without parental consent. You threatened her with federal prosecution. You filed a demonstrably false report. She stood, gathered files. The U.S. Attorney's Office is reviewing charges. False reporting under 18 U.S.C. 1001, up to 5 years. Deprivation of civil rights under 18 U.S.C. 242, up to 10 years. Conspiracy to violate civil rights under 18 U.S.C. 241, another 10 years. And given she's a minor, enhanced penalties apply. Derek's face went white as paper. Agent Torres, his lawyer interjected. My client has no criminal record. He's lost his job. His license is under review. His reputation destroyed. Perhaps a plea agreement. Perhaps, Rebecca said. But understand this case has 7 million TikTok views. Every news network covered it. NOACP watching. ACLU watching. Civil rights organizations nationwide watching. The U.S. attorney is under significant pressure to prosecute aggressively as a deterrent. She headed for the door, turned back. Your best option, plead guilty. Show genuine remorse. Cooperate fully with our investigation into Janet Pierce and Richard Thompson, because they're being investigated too. And if you help us build that case, it might reduce your sentence from 20 years to 2. After Rebecca left, Derek put his head in his hands and cried. 26 years of flying, spotless safety record, thousands of successful flights, all destroyed because he looked at a 13-year-old black girl and saw a threat instead of a child. Ashley Rodriguez, the price of racism. Ashley sat in her Van Nuys apartment, $1,850 a month, rent due in 19 days, scrolling through the wreckage of her digital life. Her name was trending worldwide. Not just trending, it was number 2. Right below hashtag Justice for Destiny. Her face was on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, Fox, BBC, Al Jazeera, every network globally. The screenshot of her saying "you people" with Destiny's tearful face beside it had become the definitive image of workplace racism. Her Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn flooded before she could make them private. Thousands of messages, most hateful. Some death threats, Reddit thread. Never let Ashley Rodriguez work again. For 47,000 upvotes, someone found her high school yearbook photo and posted it, racism before it gets a badge. Her phone rang. Her lawyer, Marcus Goldman, $400 hour she couldn't afford. Ashley, FBI wants to interview you tomorrow. Out investigating. Margaret Torres filed $7 million civil suit. We need to discuss settlement and plea options. I don't have $2.7 million. I have $8,000 in savings. Then we negotiate payment plan. But Ashley, the evidence is overwhelming. Michael Patterson recorded everything. 312,000 people watched it live. Video's been downloaded and preserved by dozens of organizations. There's no defense. So what do? We plead guilty, show remorse, cooperate with investigation into Janet Pierce and Richard Thompson, hope for reduced sentence and manageable settlement. After the call, Ashley stared at her apartment. Without a job, she had maybe 2 months before eviction. She pulled up Emma's TikTok and forced herself to watch. Really watch. Destiny's face when Ashley denied the ginger ale. The humiliation when Ashley made her walk to economy. The tears when meal service skipped her. The devastation when Derek photographed her. For the first time, Ashley actually saw what she'd done. Not through the lens of protocol or security or maintaining standards. Through the lens of a child being systematically destroyed by adults with power. She'd convinced herself she wasn't racist. She'd voted for Obama. She had black friends, or people she thought were friends. She'd simply believed certain people didn't belong in first class. And that belief had seemed natural, obvious, justified by Janet's training. Trust your gut about who belongs where. Notice profile inconsistencies. Recognize the first-class demographic. Corporate language for racial profiling. And Ashley had internalized it so completely that she'd terrorized a child without feeling guilt. Until now, when the whole world was watching and she couldn't hide behind protocols, the regret came too late, the recognition too late, the humanity too late. Destiny Brooks would carry trauma from this day for years. Ashley's apology, whenever it came, wouldn't undo that. Her phone buzzed. Email from Skybound's legal department. Settlement offer. Confidential, Miss Rodriguez. Given the severity of documented violations and strength of evidence, we offer the following settlement terms in lieu of protracted litigation: 1. Admission of wrongdoing and public apology. 2. Payment of $340,000, $8,000 immediate. Remainder over 15 years. 3. Permanent ban from aviation industry. 4. 500 hours community service, teaching bias awareness. 5. Full cooperation with federal investigation. Failure to accept within 72 hours will result in full prosecution seeking maximum penalties. $340,000. Every penny of her savings plus 15 years of payments. Her aviation career permanently over. Ashley read the terms through tears and knew she had no choice. She'd destroyed a child's sense of safety. She'd violated federal law. She'd become the face of everything wrong with systemic racism. This was the price. Janet Pierce, the architect. In Chicago, Janet Pierce sat in Skybound headquarters conference room facing Michael Patterson, Marcus Rivera, General Counsel, Jennifer Walsh, VPH, and 2 FBI agents. FBI agent William Carter slid documents across the table. Ms. Pierce, we've subpoenaed your phone, email, and all personnel files you've handled. We've found evidence you systematically buried 127 discrimination complaints over 5 years. Janet's lawyer tried to interject, but Carter continued. We've retrieved text messages between you and multiple flight attendants, showing you actively coach them in discriminatory practices using coded language. Profile inconsistencies. First-class demographic. Trust your gut about who belongs where. You taught them how to discriminate legally. Michael leaned forward, fury barely controlled. Janet, I hired you 6 years ago, trusted you to maintain our culture. Instead, you created a protection racket for racist employees while silencing their victims. Why? Janet looked exhausted. I thought I was protecting the company from frivolous complaints. Frivolous. Michael's voice was sharp as glass. A child asking for ginger ale and being denied because of her skin color. That's frivolous. No, I didn't mean. You meant exactly that. You decided which complaints mattered based on your own biases. Now the company faces federal investigation, millions in liabilities, destroyed reputation, and criminal charges for executives who enabled you, Jennifer Walsh added. Janet, we're contacting every passenger whose complaint you buried. 127 people. We're offering settlements and formal apologies. Do you understand how many lives you affected? Janet's lawyer. My client invokes Fifth Amendment. She can invoke whatever she wants. Michael interrupted. She's fired, effective immediately. And I'm recommending federal prosecution for conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, and federal employment discrimination violations. Agent Carter nodded. Ms. Pierce, you're facing up to 15 years in federal prison. We'll be in touch. As they let her out, Michael turned to Marcus. How many other supervisors were doing the same? At least 4 in Western Region. We're investigating all of them. This gets worse before it gets better. But it will get better, Marcus said, because you're not hiding. You're fixing it. Richard Thompson, the final domino. At 8 p.m. that night, Richard Thompson sat in Michael's office for the emergency board meeting. He'd brought his lawyer. He knew how this would end. Michael didn't waste time. Richard, Janet Pierce was your direct supervisor. She buried 127 complaints. You signed off on 23 personally. Either you knew and didn't care, or you didn't know because you failed at oversight. Which is it? Thompson's lawyer started to speak. Michael held up a hand. Before you answer, know I've reviewed all your emails, approval chains, oversight reports. FBI has copies, so don't lie. Thompson slumped. I trusted Janet. She said the complaints were handled. You trusted without verifying. You signed no action required without investigating. You created a culture where supervisors could protect racist employees with zero oversight. Michael slid a resignation letter across the desk. Two choices: sign and leave quietly, or I fire you publicly and recommend federal charges for negligent supervision and civil rights violations. Thompson reached for the pen with a trembling hand as he signed away his career. Michael felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion. This wasn't victory. This was triage, cutting out infected tissue before it killed the whole body. But at least the rot was being exposed. At least the system was being dismantled. And maybe Skybound could finally become what Michael had always intended, a place where every passenger was treated with dignity, regardless of race or income or appearance. Maybe. Act 4, Emotional Resolution and Aftermath. The competition, Destiny's triumph. The next morning, Destiny Brooks walked into the Los Angeles Convention Center with her head high and her heart steady. She'd slept 4 hours in the Westin Bonaventure. Room 847, her parents had driven straight through from Detroit, 17 hours, arriving at 3 a.m. Her father still wore his factory uniform, too exhausted to change. Her mother's hands still smelled like cleaning solution even after washing them twice. They'd held her while she cried. Then they'd helped her prepare. The reunion, new scene when her parents first walked into that hotel room at 3:07 a.m. Destiny had been sitting on the bed in darkness, unable to sleep, replaying every moment of the flight. Baby, her mother's voice broke on that single word. Destiny looked up and saw her father in the doorway. Tall, strong James Brooks, who never cried, with tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry we couldn't protect you." Destiny ran to them. They caught her in the middle of the room, the three of them collapsing onto the carpet in a tangle of arms and tears. "You did protect me," Destiny sobbed into her father's shoulder. "You saved for 8 months. You worked until your body broke. You gave me everything, and they still treated you like that," her mother said, voice shaking with fury and grief. "Our baby. Our brilliant baby." They stayed on that carpet for 20 minutes, holding each other while Destiny told them everything. Every word Ashley had said, every question Derek had asked, every moment of humiliation and fear. "I thought I'd never get here," Destiny whispered. "I thought I'd miss registration. I thought it was all for nothing." Her father pulled back, looked her in the eyes. "Listen to me. What happened on that plane wasn't about you. You didn't fail. You didn't do anything wrong. You existed, and that was their problem, not yours." "Your father's right," her mother said, wiping Destiny's tears with gentle fingers. "Those people saw a brilliant black girl who deserved to be in first class, and it broke something in them. That's their failure, not yours." "So now what?" Destiny asked. Her father smiled through tears. "Now you go to that competition, and you show them what we already know, that you belong anywhere you want to be." Now at 9:07 a.m., Destiny stood in the competition hall with 51 other students, the brightest young mathematicians in America. The judges called her name. Destiny Brooks, Detroit, Michigan. She walked to the whiteboard for the oral problem round. Patricia Morrison from MIT smiled warmly. "Miss Brooks, your problem proved the eigenvalue decomposition for a 3x3 Hermitian matrix." Destiny picked up the marker. Her hand was steady now. No trembling, no tears, just focus. She wrote the proof cleanly, explaining each step with clarity that made complex mathematics look simple. The matrix algebra flowed from her mind to the board like water finding its path. When she finished 11 minutes later, Dr. Morrison was beaming. "Flawless, absolutely flawless." Round 2 advanced calculus, Destiny solved differential equations that made 3 other competitors give up halfway through. Problem 47, the eigenvalue problem she couldn't focus on during the flight, she solved in 4 minutes flat. This one's for you, Ashley Rodriguez. Math doesn't care about your biases. Round 3, the final challenge. The top 5 students, Destiny, 2 Asian students, 1 white student, 1 Hispanic student, faced a graduate-level problem about quantum entanglement optimization. 30 minutes to work, 10 minutes to present. Destiny's presentation was brilliant, clear, confident, supported by mathematics so elegant it was almost poetry. When results were announced at 5:47 p.m., Second place, Destiny Brooks, Detroit, Michigan, full scholarship to MIT, plus $75,000. Her parents jumped to their feet, crying and cheering like their daughter had just won the Olympics. During her acceptance speech, Destiny's voice rang through the auditorium, no longer the small, frightened voice from the plane, but something stronger. 3 days ago, someone tried to make me feel like I didn't belong in first class. They questioned my worth. They made me doubt myself. She held up her medal, silver gleaming under lights. But my parents taught me that excellence has no color, intelligence has no race, dreams have no boundaries. She looked directly at her parents in the audience. Mom, Dad, you worked triple shifts until your bodies broke. You saved every penny. You sacrificed everything. This medal is yours. This scholarship is yours. This moment is yours. We did it together. Her father was sobbing openly. The man who never cried, who'd stayed strong through 16 years of assembly line work, who'd held his pain inside for 8 months of triple shifts, and to every kid watching who's been told they don't belong somewhere. Yes, you do. You belong anywhere your brilliance takes you. Don't let anyone tell you different. Math doesn't care about your skin color. Neither should people. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Meanwhile, national news CNN was running a special Skybound Airlines when a CEO actually takes action. The narrative had shifted. Skybound wasn't the villain anymore. Ashley, Derek, and Janet were. Michael Patterson was being hailed as a model for corporate accountability. Business schools were calling. Harvard wanted a case study. Stanford wanted to analyze the policy changes. Wharton wanted Michael for a guest lecture series. The stock price had recovered and risen 11% above pre-incident levels. Consumers were rewarding accountability with loyalty, justice, legal consequences. 1 week later, Ashley Rodriguez. Federal court. Ashley stood in federal court in a plain gray suit, her sparkly pink phone case replaced with something more somber, her lawyer beside her. Her family in the back row, looking shell-shocked. Ms. Rodriguez, you've agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to violate civil rights under 18 U.S.C. 241. How do you plead guilty, Your Honor? The judge looked at her over reading glasses. You understand this carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison? Yes, Your Honor. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? Ashley's voice shook, but she made herself speak clearly. Your Honor, I'm not going to make excuses. I told myself I was following protocol, protecting the airline, maintaining standards, but I was protecting my own biases. I looked at a 13-year-old child and decided she didn't belong in first class because of her skin color. I denied her service, humiliated her, traumatized her. I did it because I'd been trained to see certain people as threats instead of passengers. But training doesn't excuse racism. It just explains how systemic it was. She took a breath. I'm sorry. To Destiny Brooks, to her family, to every passenger I discriminated against over 6 years. I'm sorry. There's no excuse. I want people to know that if you think you're not racist, but you still treat people differently based on race, you're lying to yourself like I did. And by the time you realize it, you've already destroyed people's lives. The judge sentenced her to 9 months in federal prison, plus 500 hours of community service, teaching bias awareness workshops. The civil lawsuit settled for $340,000. Every penny of Ashley's savings, also plus a 15-year payment plan that would follow her for the rest of her working life. Her aviation career was over. Permanently. Derek Shaw, the captain's fall. Derek pled guilty to false reporting and civil rights violations. 18 months in federal prison. Pilot's license permanently revoked. His wife filed for divorce within 2 weeks. His adult children stopped returning his calls. At 52, with a federal conviction and no pilot's license, he had to rebuild his entire life from nothing. In a prison interview months later, he said, I destroyed a child's sense of safety because she didn't look like what I thought first-class passengers should look like. I threw away 26 years for racism I didn't even recognize I had. That's what haunts me. I genuinely thought I was being professional. I didn't see my own bias until it destroyed everything. If I could go back, but I can't. So now I live with it, and I deserve to. Janet Pierce, The Architect's Downfall. Janet Pierce awaited trial on conspiracy charges. The FBI had found evidence she'd buried 127 complaints over 5 years, protecting multiple racist employees across Western region. She faced up to 15 years in federal prison. Her husband divorced her. Her 2 teenage children refused to speak to her. She'd become the face of corporate complicity and racism, the supervisor who'd built a system to protect discrimination while using professional language to hide it. Industry transformation. 6 months later. The Destiny Brooks effect rippled through the entire aviation industry. Delta, United, American, Southwest, all implemented mandatory body cameras within 90 days. FAA created new bias training requirements for all. U.S. Airlines DOT established Office of Passenger Civil Rights with $50 million budget. Congress passed the Airline Passenger Bill of Rights Act with bipartisan support. Michael Patterson testified before Congress. Change happened because one person had the courage to send an anonymous email, because passengers had the courage to record everything, because a 13-year-old girl had the courage to keep going after the worst day of her life. That's how accountability works. Ordinary people refusing to accept the unacceptable. 6 months later, lasting change. Skybound Airlines, transformation complete. Michael stood in the new training center, watching flight attendants complete quarterly bias training, not videos watched passively, but real scenarios with testing and accountability. The metrics told the story. Discrimination complaints filed 423, up from 47, because passengers now believed they'd be heard. And complaints investigated, 423, 100% investigation rate. Employees terminated for bias, 34. Body cameras installed, 2,847 crew members, 100% compliance. Independent oversight board, active, meeting weekly. No corporate influence. Passenger satisfaction, up 23%. Stock price, up 11% from pre-incident. The Destiny Brooks Scholarship had awarded 23 full-ride scholarships to underrepresented students in STEM in its first 6 months. Destiny at MIT. At 14, Destiny started college early. MIT welcomed her with open arms and a support system designed specifically for gifted students of color. She was thriving. GPA 4.0 in first semester, research-focused quantum computing applications. Involvement, President of National Society of Black Engineers. MIT. Chapter Mental Health. Weekly therapy to process the trauma. Slowly healing. In an interview with CNN 6 months after the incident, "That day on the plane was the worst day of my life, but it became a catalyst for change that's protected thousands of passengers. I don't think about Ashley or Derek much anymore. They're serving their sentences. I'm busy building my future." She paused, choosing words carefully. "What I learned at your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you respond when they treat you badly. I chose to respond by winning, and I'm going to keep winning." Her parents visited monthly. James had stopped the triple shifts. His back was slowly healing. Patricia quit the weekends. Her hands had stopped bleeding. They'd paid off Aunt Regina's car repairs with part of the settlement money. The sacrifice had been worth it. 1 year later, full circle, Washington, D.C. Senate testimony. Destiny stood in the Senate chamber. No longer a frightened 13-year-old, but a confident 14-year-old MIT freshman testifying in support of the Airline Passenger Bill of Rights Act. "Senator, members of the committee, 1 year ago I asked for ginger ale on a plane. What followed changed my life and changed an industry." She spoke about dignity, justice, and accountability, about the power of ordinary people with phones recording truth, about corporate leaders who chose action over cover-ups. The bill passed 87-13 with bipartisan support. The president signed it in a ceremony attended by Destiny, her parents, Michael Patterson, Margaret Torres, and 23 other passengers who'd experienced discrimination. "This is for every child who's been told they don't belong," President said, handing Destiny the signing pen. Cameras flashed. History was made. Skybound Airlines. Present day. Michael's company became the gold standard for inclusive aviation. Other CEOs called asking for guidance. His answer was always the same. You have to mean it, not just print diversity statements in handbooks, enforce them, fire people who violate them, empower victims to speak up without fear, and accept that accountability is uncomfortable but necessary. Skybound's revenue increased 18% in the year after the incident. Turns out accountability is excellent for business. The legacy Ashley Rodriguez worked retail earning minimum wage, teaching bias workshops on weekends as part of her sentence. Her federal conviction meant she'd never work in aviation again. Derek Shaw, after release, volunteered with civil rights organizations, trying to rebuild something from the wreckage. Janet Pierce and Richard Thompson faced federal trials, both convicted, both sentenced to multiple years in prison. But more importantly, thousands of passengers flew safely because one CEO refused to look away when a child asked for ginger ale. Epilogue: the letter in Michael's office. 1 year later, on Michael's wall hung a frame containing 2 items. First, a replica of Destiny's competition medal. She'd had one made for him. Second, a letter from her parents, handwritten on lined paper. Dear Mr. Patterson, it's been 1 year since Flight 892. We wanted to write to tell you what your actions meant, not just to Destiny, but to us. For 8 months, we worked ourselves to exhaustion. James's back still hurts some days. Patricia's hands still have scars. We borrowed money we couldn't easily repay. We did it all because we believed that if we could just get Destiny to that competition, she'd have a chance. When you called us from LAX to tell us what happened on that flight, we were terrified. Then you told us you'd witnessed it, recorded it, and fired everyone involved. You told us Destiny was safe and on her way to the competition. We cried, not from sadness, from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming feeling that for once, someone with power had used it to protect our daughter instead of hurt her. You didn't just save Destiny that day. You taught her something we'd tried to teach her, but couldn't prove until you showed her that power can be used for good, that there are people in authority who will stand up for what's right even when it's hard, that justice is possible. Destiny talks about you sometimes. She says when she's successful, not if, but when, she wants to use her platform the way you used yours, to protect people who need protecting, to stand up when it's uncomfortable, to make the world a little more just. That's the legacy of what you did, not just policy changes or legal consequences, though those matter, but showing a 13-year-old Black girl that she belongs anywhere her brilliance takes her, and that there are people who will fight to protect that truth. Thank you for being in Seat 7C that day. With eternal gratitude. James and Patricia Brooks. Destiny made Dean's List her first semester at MIT. She wants you to know. Michael read that letter every morning before starting work. It reminded him why the hard decisions mattered, why accountability was worth the discomfort, why one person in the right place at the right time could change everything. The phone call. New scene one afternoon in November. Michael's assistant buzzed. Mr. Patterson, Destiny Brooks on line 1. Michael smiled. Press the button. Destiny, how's MIT treating you? Mr. Patterson, I have news. Her voice was bright with excitement. I just got published. My first academic paper about quantum algorithm optimization. MIT's featuring it in their undergraduate research journal. I'm the youngest student they've ever published. Destiny, that's incredible. Send me the link immediately. I will. And Mr. Patterson. Her voice softened. Thank you for everything, for showing me that one person really can make a difference. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to do the same thing you did, use whatever power I have to protect people who need it. Michael felt his throat tighten. You already are. Destiny. Every time you walk into a classroom, every time you solve a problem that makes professors' jaws drop, every time you exist as your brilliant self, you're changing what people think is possible. That's power. I learned from the best, Destiny said. See you at the Scholarship Awards ceremony next month. Wouldn't miss it for the world. After hanging up, Michael sat for a moment in his office, looking at that framed letter on his wall. Sometimes justice looked like terminating employees and filing federal charges. Sometimes it looked like a 14-year-old girl publishing groundbreaking research at MIT. Sometimes it looked like parents whose hands had healed and whose sacrifices had been worth it. And sometimes, just sometimes, it looked like one CEO in an economy seat with a recording phone, refusing to let discrimination happen on his watch. Final message. Sometimes the person you least expect to have power is the one person who can change everything. Sometimes justice doesn't just happen. It requires someone brave enough to record it, strong enough to reveal it, and powerful enough to enforce it. And sometimes, one flight changes an entire industry forever. Because excellence has no color, justice has no price, and dignity isn't optional, it's mandatory. For every Destiny Brooks who's been told they don't belong, you belong everywhere. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. It helps us reach more people who need to hear stories like Destiny's. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story about justice, accountability, and people who refuse to stay silent. And most importantly, share this video. Share it with someone who's been told they don't belong somewhere. Share it with someone who needs to understand that silence enables discrimination. Share it with somebody who has the power to make change but hasn't used it yet. Because change doesn't happen in darkness. Change happens when enough people see the truth and demand better. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you witnessed what happened to Destiny? Would you have spoken up? Would you have recorded it? Would you have stayed silent? Let's have that conversation. Let's keep this dialogue going.